Hey, Mom2 community. We're going to continue talking about childcare and all the craziness that goes with it, especially right now, this day and age, with their Vice President of Education and Development, Rachel Robertson. Hi, Rachel. Welcome
Hi,
to
Jill.
the Mom2 Summit Facebook Live.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Can you give me a little intro about yourself? Do you have any children?
I do. One of the great things about doing education or conversations with families is I'm kind of on the other side of things, not all the way on the other side, but I have a almost 20-year-old and a 24-year-old. So I can look back with a little ease saying, that I shouldn't have worried so much about that, or, oh, good thing I spent some parenting attention on that one. But they are two young ladies that are doing great things in the world, and I'm so proud of them. I've worked in early care and education for almost 30 years, if we count my first job when I was 15 years old, working after school in an early care and education program. I've worked in all different aspects of early care and education, and really fell in love with it. After I did some work in it, because I thought this is where such a rich brain development and life foundations are happening. I want to be here for this. I want to be a part of this. I've also been an author, or I am an author of children's books, resource books, a series of resources for military families. So I've gotten to do a lot of different things to support children and families. And I keep learning about children and families and child development as well. So that's another thing that really energizes me about my work.
Well, you sound like a wealth of information, and we have so many questions, so many things I'm personally curious about that I'm sure we're going to have a ton to talk about.
Great.
Let's start off with Bright Horizons. So we may be familiar, I think Bright Horizons, we think childcare services, but I hear that that's not all that Bright Horizons has to offer families. Can you tell me a little bit more about the other services that you have?
Yeah, so I'm first of all, I'll say I'm very thankful that you're using the terminology of childcare. I have even written an article about setting aside the terminology of daycare. I understand why people use that, but if we're going to respect and reflect the important development that's happening in the first 5 years, we need to think about it differently. And to me, that includes renaming it. So really thinking about children are at the heart of this, and it's early care and education that we are doing, and care and education should go hand in hand. You should not try to separate those two things, especially in the formative years where children can't learn without care. Frankly, no one can learn without care, but especially in those formative years. And we really think at Bright Horizons about care and education across the lifespan. So we have services and lines of business that are about helping children figure out where they want to go to college. So some supports for families looking for camp or nannies, or maybe even just sitters through Sitter City. We have resources that help organizations plan their workforce education benefits and programs. We have resources that help with elder care. So anything really about care and education across the lifespan, that's what we're thinking about at Bright Horizons.
That's amazing. I had no idea. So as a childcare center, and I love that you made that distinction between daycare and childcare. I have never thought of it that way. Totally changed my perspective now. What sets Bright Horizons apart from other daycares or childcare centers?
I think, so I very specifically came to Bright Horizons about 12 years ago. I had been working in multiple types of organizations, mostly in direct service and care for young children. And I wanted to come to Bright Horizons for a couple things. And I am a steward of these things still, and hopefully have advanced them at Bright Horizons, is that we take the science of early childhood development and early learning very seriously. We don't do what's popular necessarily, or what's a trend, or what everybody read an article about and is now asking about. We take the real deep, proven research about children and what is going to help them develop in the early years to have a precious, beautiful, lovely childhood, as well as the foundation for the rest of life. And the research tells us that we can do that, which again is why I work in this field, because while these children won't come back to us and say, oh, those experiences we had in that classroom made a difference for us when we were in college, I know that they are, because so much brain development, 1 million neural connections. I know a lot of people know this by now, but 1 million neural connections per second in these early years. That's amazing. Those are, we're born with all those neurons, and they are connecting through social interactions, through play, through relationships, through the opportunity to discover and explore. And our approach to early learning is a science-informed, you're not surprised now, approach to early learning and development called discovery-driven learning, because we know when children get to ask questions, all those questions they ask parents a million times a day, and sometimes you're like, okay, enough. We're here for those questions. Bring them to us. If you want to know how something works, if you want to know why something is happening, 3-year-old, ask them, and maybe that'll be the core of what we explore in the classroom for the week. And that is such a beautiful part of Bright Horizons to me, is if I go in classrooms and visit, I very rarely see the same thing happening, because what's happening in our classrooms is because it's what children are interested in and what they're curious about, and we are nurturing that and combining what we know about child development with that in a multidisciplinary way. So if children are interested in the construction project across the street, they're going to learn language, they're going to learn STEM, they're going to learn visual arts maybe through the exploration of the construction project across the street.
This is so interesting to me. I love how you have such a clear focus on science-backed. So can you give me an example? Say if we were to walk in to a Bright Horizons right now, to like a pre-K room, what is something that you would commonly see happening for them, an activity that they're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one feature of our discovery-driven learning approach is that we have different domains of development that we're thinking about, but we do it in a multidisciplinary way. And we're thinking about those 21st century future-ready skills like thinking and learning, how to think, how to develop your planning and trying and maybe failing, and what you do next after that skill. So you would see a lot of experiments in a Bright Horizons classroom. You will see things, children saying something like, I wonder how tall this tower can be, or maybe they'll have blueprints up on a screen in the classroom that they're replicating a building that they've seen recently, and the teacher is facilitating that learning, functions as a co-researcher or a co-learner with children versus a teller of information. Because what fun is it for someone to just tell you the answers? You want to be able to find out yourself and build the confidence in that. So maybe children are experimenting with that and they can't quite get it right, and a teacher would say, what do you think we could do differently? Let's find out. And very exploratory, using children's curiosity and interest and their own agency, meaning children can be capable participants in their own learning. And a lot of our best early learning philosophies include this idea. Montessori includes this idea of children get to be part of it. We don't just want to tell them what to do all day and direct them around and tell them, no, what you can't do that, you can't do that, you can do this. That doesn't help them build their thinking and learning skills, and it doesn't help them figure out who they are and who they want to be in this world and what they care about. And we're really supportive of that, because we know that's what helps children develop into strong, healthy, resilient, successful human beings,
which is what we're all aiming for. And it sounds like you guys have a lot to offer for people who can access your locations and need that in-house childcare situation. But also, in addition to that, you have free monthly virtual family webinars. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so you asked earlier what are the things that are different about Bright Horizons, and this is another thing that I really am drawn to and feel important to continue to carry on, is that we at Bright Horizons think about the whole community of families and educators and children, and we know that we have a lot of good resources, and we think about how can we share, how can we help everybody. So I do a lot of parent family education. I think it's really important. It shouldn't be exclusive to children and families that are joining Bright Horizons in our programs. So every month, one of many things we do is every month we offer family webinars on hot topics, and we choose these topics based on what parents are asking us about and what we just generally know as important child development topics. They aren't for everybody. Not everybody has to join every topic. These are a choice for families to join us, something that might be interesting or pressing. They're thinking ahead, they're living in it in the moment, whatever it might be. And any parent, any family can join. We just did one last month. Sometimes I'm a guest and sometimes I'm not, but last month I was the guest, and the focus was on how stress can impact children's learning and how to make choices about balance and schedules, and are you really missing out if you don't sign up for all the extracurriculars, and how many should you sign up for, and how to have a schedule that is rich and valuable for a child without overwhelming the family, the parents too, or the child.
Can I have you clarify for me real quick? Are those webinars available only to families that currently attend Bright Horizons?
Those webinars are available to the whole wide world, as we like to say.
Wow.
People can join from other countries even but anyone can join our family webinars. We love people to join live, to ask questions. There's a nice robust chat going on usually between families, but we also, if someone registers, we also record it and they will get the link to that.
Now I also hear, just like I spoke to one of your coworkers, Priya, she has a podcast. You also have a podcast, one for Bright Horizons, and it's called Teach, Play, Love. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so this is another resource we just do for families. It's accessible to anyone. You can get it on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get podcasts. And it's very intentionally a play on the title of the book, Eat, Pray, Love. So it's Teach, Play, Love. I know a lot of educators listen to it as well, but it is real practical guidance and ideas, and just two moms. It's me and my colleague Claire Goss, who's also a mother and a parenting expert, and just talking about the real life of raising children and all that comes with that, with our child development expertise, lens, and experience, bringing those two things together. We just did one on solo parenting, which can be all the way from a 100% single parenting to you're a parent whose spouse or partner is traveling quite a bit. So what that feels like. We've also done one recently on stress. We've done one on resilience, all different kinds of topics, schedules, transitions, you name it. We try to cover it. And I'm super excited about this. We just got a email address and a phone number. So now we're going to take suggestions from our audience, which I'm thrilled about. And I just love being able to say we have a call-in number. So we're going to hear from our callers now. I've never had callers before, so it's a new thing.
You're like Delilah.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Delilah.
And so you can find this podcast anywhere on all podcast platforms?
Anywhere, all the podcast platforms. Yep. Anywhere you can. We also, if you just Google Teach, Play, Love, it shows up on our Bright Horizons, one of our Bright Horizons pages, and there's a link right to it. But yes, anywhere you get podcasts, you can also find it.
That's fantastic. I would love to know more about your writing career and what got you interested and what you write about for children.
Yeah, I think it's a very big deal to me personally, because when I was a little kid, I set my sights on being a writer. And that was, in high school or all through when I was growing up, people said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I would say a writer. So I have figured out a way to blend what I then fell in love with as a professional adult, early education, with writing. I started actually because I was in a military family during some pretty difficult times and thought, I know about children and child development, and I see the stress parents are going through in this situation. Is there a way to bring these two things together? And I just fortuitously started talking to the publisher of some books I was reading as a military spouse. And we talked about a book for children, which turned into a deployment journal for kids, using the idea of journaling, which is a good for dealing with heavy emotions in a difficult situation. And that ended up being something that the Army purchased in bulk for all children whose family were going through a deployment for a number of years. So that led to other things. So there's a series now of deployment journals for families. And again, I took this idea of how can we use books and literature in a way that helps through a social emotional life challenge. So now that's what my children's books are about too. So I have 3 children's books, and they're on Amazon and easy to find, but they are about a way to help a parent or a teacher help children through a social emotional life challenge. So one is called A Teacher's Promise. This is about starting school. You have a new teacher. A lot of people are using it when their children are going off to kindergarten or first grade. The most recent one is called Beginners Are Brave, and it really is about being brave enough to try something new. And frankly, I use that book in my conversations with adults as much as I do with children. It's okay. It's okay. You're not supposed to be good at something right away. And we all need to hear that. Beginners are brave.
I'm pretty sure that every person watching this needs to hear that. I know I personally need to remember that every single day. So You mentioned kindergarten, getting started for kindergarten. Since you are an expert, let's talk a little bit about what does early childhood education look like as you prep and get ready to go into kindergarten?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. It's such a complicated conversation to have around what it means to be ready for school. And there's so many different definitions of this. And a lot of parents, this is when I can use my long-term, I've been through it and I can see the other side experience along with my child development expertise. Is a lot of parents, very rightly so, want their child to be prepared and set up for the very best experience and life experiences, and are looking for, maybe it's an enrichment or an extracurricular or a real academic focus in the early years. But what I would just encourage everyone to think about is, we know that the best neural connections, the strongest neural connections, are happening through play and relationships. And if you replace that time with other things, you are skipping or missing development while you're trying to strengthen something else. A lot of times what could look like learning is just really memorization. So what you want to do is think about that like a house analogy, and you are focusing in the first 5 years on a strong foundation. Children are learning who they are, what they're capable of, that they are loved and safe in this world, that their imagination and their curiosities and their ability to persevere and plan and think of an idea, and then, oh, that didn't work, think of another idea. Those are the most important kinds of things. And if they don't get those in the early years, it's going to be hard for them to get them later. And those things matter for everything. You and I are using those skills right now. We're regulating our emotions. We are in a collaborative conversation. We're keeping things in our mind that we want to think of later. Those are all things that children can start working on in the early years. But if they're spending too much time memorizing something like the alphabet, not that it's not important, but if it's just a rote memorization activity, they lose the time and space for the more important things. And those are the things that really, even kindergarten teachers, schools will say are really important for school readiness. Those are those 21st century skills, future ready skills that apply to anything a person is doing, not just a discrete academic area. So I would let parents take the pressure off a little bit about, my child has to be doing this before kindergarten if they're going to be successful. If they're in play rich, relationship rich, autonomy building, agency building, discovery based learning, those children have the best start in life, and they will be ready for school and everything beyond school.
I love that you are, what you say, like a parent who's been there. You've been through it. You have grown children. And I always love asking parents who are just a little bit ahead of me about their advice and their experience, because goodness knows, if I could go back in time and talk to younger me, I would have so much to say to her. I don't think she would listen though. So I would love to know just like an anecdote or a story from your time as a mother to younger children, and how that maybe shaped or changed the way you view early childhood education.
That's a really good question. I know, I've really battled a lot with myself about what I know is developmentally appropriate and what is good for me as a parent, and then just the emotions of it. So I've had a lot of moments, I can think of a couple in general, where my kids were experiencing something and I really wanted to swoop in and help them. And I stopped myself because didn't want to get in the way of their development, but oh my gosh, is that hard to do? And sometimes I probably stopped myself more than I needed to. So I would just say, trust your gut about your child. Your child, what you're doing when you're raising children is you're raising future successful adults. So if you just play the long game, which is something that Claire and I talk a lot about on the podcast, who do you want this person to be and be able to do when they're older? And are you getting them ready for that? And being there and answering questions and helping them solve a problem is part of that. So sometimes I probably step back a little more than I needed to. I remember one time my older daughter, because I traveled quite a bit for work, and I said something when I was home. I said, I'm going to make breakfast for you. And she said, I don't need you to. And I was like, but let me, I'm here, I can do it. And she said, what do you think I do when you're gone? I know how to make my own breakfast. And I said, here, listen here. We're going to not be so independent when I'm home. I need you to need me. But what I do know looking back is that, that battle I had with myself, in the end, it was a good thing that I mostly just either facilitated or supported them solving their own problems, even though it was messy sometimes, because they can do it now. They can do it as adults. And I don't want them to feel like they can't make a doctor's appointment, even though they still call me sometimes to ask for help with that. I don't want them to feel like they're not capable adults. And you can do that. If you intervene too much, you can interrupt their own self-confidence, and you take more on as a parent than you need to about, are you solving everything? You don't have to do that. So I guess to sum all that up, I'd say play the long game. Think about what experiences and skills they need now that will help them be a successful adult in the future. But don't let that get in the way of also being a kind, compassionate, caring person, because that they need that in the future too. They need to know there is a phone a friend, phone a mom, phone a parent when they need it, but that they have the skills and abilities to do a lot of things on their own too.
It's all about balance, I think. And I also, we're about to wrap up, but I want to touch on something that I also discussed with a colleague of yours, and that is this idea of work-life balance, especially when it comes to being a caregiver of children. Can you speak a little bit about where you feel like, if it's evolved at all over the last 3 to 10 years, however long you've been in it, and like kind of the state of childcare today in terms of work-life balance? Any advice you have to give or any insight that you have about that?
Yeah, I just saw a meme recently that said, "Where's the village? Is there a number to call or something? Where is this parenting village? I really need them." And I was laughing about that because I'm like, yeah, where? I could have used it many, many times. I think that there's so much, we are a society focused on individual success and individualism, and we don't ask each other for help enough and rely on each other. And this is a good example. This platform, this group, that this community that you have here is people helping each other. So it's a lovely, wonderful thing. And we need to feel there's nothing wrong with asking for help or needing help. And that is, parents often feel guilt or they're doing something wrong if they're relying on someone else or asking for help. So I'd say that's very important. I think there is more pressure because while we know so much more about child development and how important education is, that doesn't mean how to help children successfully. It has to be that much more complicated, but it has become, or at least it feels that much more complicated. So just really feeling comfortable in the choices that you make for your child and making sure that you're not just spending their childhood building their future resume, but making sure it's a rich and beautiful childhood, because that will be what helps them be successful in the long term. I wish I had, I can think, you're making me think of all these times in my past that I'm like, oh, we won't tell that story. But I was mostly a single parent for most of, and I needed a lot of help, and I ended up having to ask for a lot of help that I didn't love to have to do. But when I look back, I think, why was I so hesitant to ask for help and to build that network and to build that community and share my successes and share my challenges? And so I just encourage everyone to do that, which is why we have these webinars and podcasts. We also have a website full of activity ideas and experiences and articles, because we're just want to be part of the village if we can and help people, because it can feel like a lot of stress, but it's also should be such a joyful experience to be a parent as well.
I love it. I'm so excited about all the resources that y'all have. I know we're going to link up to all of them. I really appreciate you joining us today, Rachel. Obviously, you have a lot going on in your life, so thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insight with us.
Thanks for having me. Nice to talk to you, Jill.
Yeah, bye.